Miss Banner clearly said the balcony incident. Now, this is about, they want motion to dismiss. They said Banner lied on the stand, which they believe is so prejudicial, and she perjured herself, that because the jury heard that lie, they could no longer make a fair assessment on what's happening in court. They can't do it. Well, she testified, despite our objections, that Diddy held her off the balcony with two hands. Held her like this. 17th floor. Then lifted her back up and threw her like the Hulk. That's what was testified to. The defense came back to say, we got proof on the date in question. That never happened. Diddy was across the country. That was a flat out lie. You talked to the government over 27 times, and you never said another date. You never said another time. You were dead set that that's the date. Not only were you dead set that that was the date, you took pictures of the date. So you know, when they looked at your phone, you went to the metadata and you said, yeah, that's the date that Diddy hung me off the balcony. So we got the date. Here's the problem. Diddy was not even on the same coast as you. So how was it Diddy? Flat out lie. That's the basic thing that we're seeing Diddy's team say. They doubled down on this so much and it's flat out a lie. We tainted the jury. Dismiss this bitch. Dismiss it. J-Locks, thank you for the 5. I think they made a point to establish Diddy is still taking care of Jane. In her case, her testimony helps during defense cross. Okay. Bless says, even the girl we don't like, that's a lawyer, said Jane Doe was the worst witness and that they'll lose a jury if they try to convince them the 10K option is coercion. Most people in the courtroom agree. Well, here's the thing. Even if you believe she's the worst witness, she's the worst of the best. Or the best of the worst, I mean. I listened to Cassie shit and all I kept hearing was Diddy beating her. This is not an abuse case. Diddy beat this girl too, but at least there's more. We have to hear money. Money. This is why they brought in this chief financial officer who said, yo, Diddy wired 20,000 there. They were trying to, without the money, this means nothing. This is sex trafficking, commercial sex acts. Diddy was paying for a lot of these things in cash. So we need to hear money. We got to hear money. This is commercial sex acts. Now, here's the thing. Cassie never said she got any of the proceeds. That's the thing. So look like both of y'all were hiring a sex worker. Gina is saying, no, I keep calling her Gina. Daphne's saying, I took some of the money sometimes, or at least one time. Let's keep it going. Just says, couldn't we just say the government screwed up, giving Miss Westmoreland a rare Perry Mason moment in federal court? That the defense back in its war zone could say, great job. What the hell is the judge saying? Huh? So they said, Banner clearly said the balcony incident took place on September 26th. She perjured herself, and they knew. The government elicited that all injuries were at the same time. The judge said some crazy shit. Couldn't we just say the government screwed up giving Miss Westmoreland a rare Perry Mason moment in federal court? So, okay, I get it. They're saying we could say the government, like, why do you want me to dismiss the entire trial, the entire case? Your defense attorney bodied her. The judge is admitting that, chat. The judge is admitting Miss Nicole Westmoreland, the one that said is the best defense lawyer up in there, bodied them. When she came out and had full proof, she bodied Banner. Banner looked like a crackhead up there and a liar. You did your job debunking that. Why should we just dismiss the case? So can't we just say whatever the defense back in this war zone could say, good job. So even the judge, this is kind of rare. The judge is telling the defense, You got a point here, but you guys bodied that point. Y'all bodied the fact that she really didn't get her dates right. Shapiro says, well, Westmoreland did do a great job, but they said they had Cassie see it as well. So Cassie is another witness who left the stand that y'all say we can't bring back. We need to have that moment with her. Because she was saying she was there for some bangling, a balcony dangling, and that ain't happened. That's a good point. So this is our second motion for a mistrial. I'm not sure why the government over there claiming that's our third. AUSA says perjury is only one prong of a 4-part test. We should Google that. We need to know all the laws here, chat. Mistrial, 4 prongs. Mistrial, 4 prongs. Court. What the fuck? Okay. So they're saying conditions. Okay. I'm going to look that up. Let me write that on the side. That's good to know. Because we really see mistrial. Mistrial. Perjury. So they're saying not because someone lies. And by the way, implicitly, I don't know if you're catching this. Implicitly, the AUSA, they're not admitting it directly, but they're kind of agreeing that, yeah, Banna might have perjured herself. She might have perjured herself. Now, will they take her up on perjury charges? Probably not. But they're admitting, yeah, looks like she lied. Even the AUSA, the judge agrees, and the AUSA. So this is why I keep saying Nicole Westmoreland is the best lawyer Diddy has. One incident of terror, the balcony dangling, has now been proven it's trash. Now, I do want to see if they're going to push this judge to instruct the jury to disregard the entire testimony of Banna, which I think they would. But not only that, what are they going to do about Cassie? Cassie's a main witness. Could they strike what Cassie said about the balcony without it being prejudicial? We already heard the story twice. You think we're about to forget? Nah, there's a balcony dangling. Maybe she got it. You know what the jury's thinking? The judge is saying there's no proof it happened now. The AUSA is saying, because she got the dates wrong, we don't got no other proof either. The jury is probably saying, because you know they're regular humans like me and you, they're like, well, 2 people said it. Even if they got the date wrong, maybe it was another date. I think it probably happened. Prejudice. Now we prejudice. So this is a big deal. Judge said this happened years ago. Banna has taken a lot of drugs. Thank God she's sober. Yo, judge, get on your job, judge. Get on your job, judge. Why the judge over here talking about she sounded like some type of inpatient rehab program? What you mean? We don't give a fuck about her drug use. This man's life is hanging in the balance. Talking about thank God she's sober. Well, why? You should scold the prosecutors for putting up a drug addict on here that don't remember, that's testifying to shit that could seriously sway the minds of the people who's on the jury. But let's keep going. Mr. Steele is also moved for a mistrial. That's what AUSA says. Well, so he said he was going to move for one. So I guess he didn't. So they're trying to argue it's the third, but it's the second. Shapiro says, we object to Juror 6 being stricken. It's under seal, but they said everyone will be heard. Okay, so there's some with a juror. We don't know what it is. Bring in Jane, then the jury. Garagos, go ahead, Tenny. Go to cross-examination. Garagos says, you're Daphne. We met before, though, right? You remember that? Then you stopped meeting with the defense. That was your choice, right? So it looks like she might have been in the middle at first. She was thinking she could be a defense witness. Garrigo says, let me get this straight. You're testifying against Mr. Combs, right? She asked the question, wait, I'm testifying against him? This ain't the sharpest knife, or she's about to gaslight people. Cool. So how many times did they prep you to be cross-examined at this trial? Jane says maybe 2 or 3. Garrigo says, did you bring in other prosecutors to cross you? She says yes. Garrigo says, after they granted you immunity at the grand jury, right? Ooh, so we get to find out. She had some secret meetings. They bring her to grand jury, and they probably threaten her just like how they threatened Cassie. You know we could indict you too. You were paying the sex workers. You're a co-conspirator. And that's the thing too. I know y'all are going to say Daphne is turning on Diddy after she wrote that thing on Instagram saying, imagine if somebody's in cuffs that shouldn't be. It appears that she's not necessarily turning on Diddy as she is saving her own ass. Remember, all this no snitching shit, obviously women never stick by that code. But it's all about self-survival more than protecting somebody. They brought her to a grand jury. She took immunity. Why is she, what federal charge? Domestic violence ain't a federal charge. I mean, it kind of is, but still, like, they're not charging you for that. You don't need immunity because you put hands on Diddy. What would she need immunity for? Sex trafficking. You would be a co-conspirator. You were getting the guys. You were organizing it. You were talking to them a lot. Garrigo says, you said you had a regret about some of the choices you made with Combs, right? She says, if you have it, I'd love to look at it with you. Okay, what's going on here, Chad? She's either unprepared or I don't know if she's about to dance. You know what I mean? She's about to dance. She's about to do the cha-cha. Maybe she's going to play dumb and help Diddy. If she plays dumb, she can help Diddy. She got to hit the don't recalls. Yeah, it's been a long time. I love him. No, I beat him too. Oh, he only put hands on me after I put hands on him. Maybe she helps. She already got the immunity. What she can't do, because her testimony was rehearsed, she had to say that yesterday. She can't go back on it. This ain't no why so woody shit. You get your immunity and act up. Can't do it. But this is cross. If you want to help Diddy, she could start taking some responsibility. Or don't remember certain facts. Okay? That's if she want to help Diddy and did the wink, wink. Let me get the deal from the government and then close that back door. Don't get snaked by your homie. You get me? Let's see. Garrigo says, it was your choice to participate in that lifestyle for many years, huh? You didn't want to break up with him, right? She says, I didn't want to. Garrigo says, you had sex with other men for years, right? I'm surprised there wasn't an objection here. Remember, they can't talk about her sexual history because she's a victim, but they allowed it. Jane says, I resent the emotional control. I was hooked from the start. There was pressure to perform these acts my lover desired. Garrigo says, you use the word partner again and again on direct. He was your partner? She says, yes. Garrigo says, you said you're having trouble answering for yourself while you had sex with these men. She said, yes. Garrigo says, are you in therapy now? She says, yes. Do you love Mr. Combs? I love to spend time with my partner. You want to cuddle with him? I like to give him foot rubs. You said, objection. It's a counselor's making herself a witness. Jane says, I love to bathe with Sean, and we watch his favorite show. What show is that? He loves some Dateline. Did you believe he was not doing this with anyone else? Well, during this time period, yeah. You ever look at his messages? You ever going through his phone? Yeah. He was vulnerable in those hotel rooms. That's what she's saying. And I shared that with him. was conflicted. I was breaking all my boundaries so he would feel loved. Garrigo says, so this brought you two together? Jane says, yes. Our lovemaking afterwards. That's why I enjoyed it. Garrigo says, did you try to be very sexy to him in those rooms? Jane says, I think I was sexy in those rooms. Yeah. Garrigo says, yeah, that's because you're a beautiful woman, right? Did you ever choose the wardrobe? Jane says, initially he did. Okay. Garrigo says, he liked the baby oil. It turned him on? She says, yes. Garrigo says, how old were you when you started this relationship with Mr. Combs? Got him. Butter her up. Time for the kill shot. You're not 22-year-old Cassie. You're not 22-year-old Cassie. Or really 19 when he met Cassie at first. No way. You're 35. You're a cougar. Stop playing. 35. Okay. What are your examples of fantasy talks in those rooms? Jane says he would have me and the entertainer being a role play. It was a cheating role play. That we would role play that Sean left town and I would be cheating on him with this man. That's odd. But anyway, Diddy would enjoy role play where the women would be cheating on him, but it's so odd because he would try to kill every nigga that she would actually cheat with him on. You know what I'm saying? His fantasy was role play like you cheating on me, act like I left town. But then when the girl cheated outside of those hotel nights, he would try to kill the nigga and her. How high were your heels? She said 6 or 7 inches. But usually I try to wear the 3 to 4 inch heels. He said, you said you wanted your child to be closer to your child's father. But did the father ever see the child? Jane says, what does that have to do with this? Wow. Remember, there's not an objection. Usually for that, it's usually objection, relevance. That's what objection, relevance. What's the relevancy of this question? The judge is usually going to say, they'll ask the defense attorney. The defense attorney will be like, hey, we're getting somewhere. We're laying a background, whatever. And they might be like, sustained or overruled. But AUSA hasn't jumped in. I'm wondering why. So, but she says herself, what does this got to do with anything? Garrigo says, who flew you weekly to Miami to see Mr. Combs? She says sometimes. I don't know who, but maybe she's talking about her baby daddy. Don't know. Garrigo says, we listened to 5 voice notes in which Mr. Combs sounded angry. But how many did he send you? He sent you thousands, right? She says yes. Garrigo says, why did you feel he was larger than life? She said there was a bright light around him. Jane says he introduced me to the gospel. He had a favorite pastor he'd like to watch on TV. Bishop T.D. Jakes, man. Come to the front of the congregation, gang. Has that stayed with you? Yes. Do you still watch that pastor today? Objection. Sustained. How much did Sean invest in your dress line? $20,000. Why did you even join OnlyFans? If I could get off of it, I would. But I needed financial help. So Mr. Combs gave you money throughout the relationship, right? In the 3.5 years. That's like about $150,000. Sound about right? I would assume. Okay. You told the government you gravitated towards providers. She says, yes, as a woman, I like that. You called the house our house. Jane says later, I saw it as my house. Garrigo says, you thought it was important that his staff not know about the entertainers, right? Objection. They overrule it. She says right. And that's the reason you go to the house, right? There's also a yard there for your son, right? Jane, she's defensive about her child. She's very defensive about her child. She says for your son, Jane, who is, you could tell, chat, she's on the stand sweating bullets because she knows some people have identified her as Daphne Joy. You see, she makes a correction. Don't gender my child as my son. Just say my child. Can you say my child? They did a break. Hold on. We should have more tweets. Holy. Wait, they took a break already? Wait, we ain't getting no tweets in what the fuck? In an hour.
Okay, here we are, Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press, here at the Southern District of New York Courthouse. Today, June 10th, it's the 20th day of U.S. versus Sean Combs. We've been going at it hard for 19 days, and yesterday was no exception. The witness known as Jane, and there are a lot of issues around this kind of growing credibility gap between, not credibility gap, just a gap between the reporting inside and the reporting outside. In any event, Jane did finish past 5 p.m. her direct examination, culminating in a violent incident in their home.
I heard GDEP is in the chat. GDEP, what up, bro?
Doors kicked off, and they remain off, as well as Combs apparently still paying for the house and for her lawyer. I don't know what the implications are. I'm sure it'll come out on cross, which we'll be covering as best as we can. And we're also covering these ICE arrests, ICE protests, ICE arrests. Yesterday, as we left the courthouse, there were scenes. Now, I have a question. This is a crowdsourcing. Some publication this morning said that there was a deployment of Marines inside the United States and from that place. So we keep reporting, and we've had law firms write to them to seek a dialogue on the First Amendment. They just don't even answer. So we have scoops. We've written the scoops of Cassie Day. It was huge. Saw the Diddy scene. Now, there was a kind of a dismissive AFP article about streamers and influencers. I mean, I don't know. I think it's not the platform, it's not the equipment that you use, it's the information that you're putting out, and unless that AFP reporter actually checked out these things, it seemed a little bit self-serving. Anyway, now we're coming up. There have been days. The Kid Cudi Day was huge out here. The Cassie Day, it was huge. Could be also that it's the rain. You can see across the street there, the tents. The tents have stayed up at night, and it's interesting that some people actually take shelter under the tents. Hang on. Are we gonna? Hang on. We might have a. Uh-oh. There's a guy who's in front of 40 Foley that has a sign about his eviction, but tying it into a large conspiracy. In any event, you now have seen it. We're covering this case as fast as we can, and other things to be continued.
Okay. Wow. Wow. We're sitting here waiting on some more tweets. Don't know what's happening. Okay. Don't know the exact thing that's happening right now.
But and that she said these pages resembled my own experience.
We got CNN as a place that we could get some updates, right? So 27 minutes ago, they took a break. Jane was back on the stand. Oh, Jane's back on the stand. So, all right, so cool. Let's read what we missed. Okay. So, she didn't want the information to leak. Jane confirmed that she and Combs didn't want anything about hotels to leak. She confirmed that it was important that the public didn't know about hotel nights and Combs' employees didn't know about the entertainers. Tenney says if they had done any hotel nights at Jane's previous apartment, she confirmed they had. So remember, Jane, who dated they agreed $10,000 a month. She was used on rent. Defense attorney Garrigo showed the jury text messages and audio message between Jane and Diddy from March 2023, right after a Turks and Caicos trip. She previously testified that during the trip, Combs sprung an entertainer on her and prompted an argument that threw things off for them for days. The two traded loving text messages and voice messages about how much fun they had. In Combs' voice note, he said he loved her. Combs also mentioned Jane's contract on the audio recording, which Jane testified was a reference to the love contract they brokered, which led to the $10,000 a month rent for her home. The jury heard an upbeat recorded response. Jane sent Combs telling him she had so much fun on the trip and loved him and felt closer to him. She said on the recording, "Everything just feels so good and I'm so happy." Jane testified that she did have fun with Combs and was expressing that she loved the time with him, excluding the time they spent with entertainers. Okay, so she would clarify that. She said, yeah, I had fun with him, but not the stuff that I do with the entertainers. Said Combs used rent money kind of as like a tool. Said Jane confirmed that when she moved into a rented home in April 2023, Diddy paid $40,000 up front to cover the security deposit, okay, and the rent for the first month and the last month. Defense attorney Garagos pointed out that the landlord already possessed several months of rent payments in case Combs ever decided to stop paying rent. Garagos suggested Combs indicated like he was also open to paying 3 more months of rent when they were about to break up. Garagos asked Jane if she ever believed Combs would stop paying the rent. Said there was sometimes I definitely felt he would do that, and he used it kind of like a tool. The rent was always like a little reminder. He said Combs talked earlier of polygamous or polyamorous actually dating, but I wanted him to be mine, Jane says. Describing a time when Jane was still trying to get to know Diddy, she testified she was with him in Miami before he bought a pair of shoes, a Bottega Veneta bag, and a bracelet. During the trip, he explained to her that he led a polyamorous dating lifestyle. Jane said she didn't mind at first because they were getting to know each other, but it became difficult once she had deeper feelings for Combs. I was feeling my man and wanted him to be mine, she says. Jane also said she felt there was an imbalance in the treatment she got from Combs in comparison to how he treated his other girlfriends. Jane says, I didn't sign up to date a man that was in a public relationship. Jane said it became difficult for her when Diddy started spending time with Young Miami about 6 months to a year after they started dating. Combs and Young Miami had a public relationship that appeared to be monogamous and would post each other on social media. But Jane said her relationship with Combs was very private. It wasn't something I signed up for. I didn't sign up to date a man that was in a public relationship. 23 minutes ago, it said Combs wasn't taking care of himself. Jane says, as the defense suggests, she knew about the addiction early. On their first trip to Turks and Caicos, Jane suggested Diddy go to rehab in Thailand. When she realized how the drugs was taking an effect on him, she testified. On the flights to Turks, she noticed his shaky hands, eyes and teeth, and coloring seemed off. I could tell he wasn't taking good care of himself, she said. Tenny Garagos suggested that Jane knew he was a drug addict from early on. In the beginning, I didn't really know how to label it, she said. I encountered someone who was overdoing the partying. As our relationship continued, I noticed a very strong pattern, and I still didn't even really label it as a drug addict. I think now I would say that, but then I wouldn't say that. I just thought he was a big party guy. Towards the end of the relationship, Jane learned Combs was taking antidepressants, she said. She confirmed she wanted him to get off drugs and back to his natural form. She testified that Combs had once told her he was interested in getting ketamine therapy. By the way, if homie comes back, let me know. Hasn't came back. Court took a break. They come back in. It said, this is a scene inside the courthouse. Diddy's mom, sister, 2 sons, they're in the courtroom. Remember, his daughters stopped coming, and Quincy hasn't came in a while. Pause. They're seated directly behind him. Mark Garagos is seated in one of the defense rows. He's watching his daughter, Tenny Garagos, question Jane on the stand. Combs smiled when Jane testified she'd like to give him foot massages and began nodding when she said He was my baby. He also briefly spoke to the courtroom sketch artist. Again, Diddy is telling the sketch artist, you got me out here looking like a koala bear. Haven't you been in this motherfucking courtroom? You see how I fuck them bitches up? I'll do it to you. No, he ain't say that. But he's talking to the sketch artist because we even heard he's been upset at how they're drawing him. They're drawing him like a goofy. And nobody plays with Diddy like he's a fucking goofy.
Sean Combs has seen these sketches and he has some feedback. The disgraced music mogul told our sketch artist to soften it up because she is making him look like a koala. We'll break that down. Soft is how it appears Sean Combs' defense team has tried to portray Diddy to the jury during his sex trafficking and racketeering trial, seemingly trying to give off the vibes of a guy who would not say, quote, I'm the devil and I could kill you, like a witness alleged on the stand. Diddy has made heart symbols for his family. He smiled at members of the gallery as he's entered court, often wearing subtle colors, sweaters, and khakis instead of the flashy outfits that came with his larger-than-life persona. But his Puff Daddy the nice guy starting to fade. It's been reported that he's had some animated discussions with his lawyers, and his facial expressions led the judge to put his foot down. We have the bad boy body language breakdown. We're on the case, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Sketches and descriptions from our reporter biggest trials, and we've learned that Diddy has reportedly been taking in her art as well. Rosenberg, who sits in
How's Diddy seen this?
the front row of the courtroom, told Reuters that during
He probably could look over and see. I don't know.
a break last
Or
week,
maybe somebody's telling him.
Diddy came over to her and told her, quote, soften me up a bit, you're making me look like a koala bear. Art, of course, is all in the
Oh shit.
eye of the beholder. Rosenberg's sketches of Combs have, if anything, looked grayer, we've noticed, than the Diddy that many of us grew up watching, because since he's been in custody, which goes back to September of last year, Combs hasn't had access to the hair coloring products that he did on the outside. It's important to note he is 55 years old, so his hair is grayer and he also has a beard. Now, the day that Combs made that request to Rosenberg, it was the same day that the judge made it clear that he wants Diddy to cool it with facial expressions in the courtroom. The judge addressed the defense team and said, quote, I was very clear this morning that there were not to be any facial expressions, other attempts to have any interaction with the jury whatsoever, any influence on the jury whatsoever, and I could not have been clearer in terms of what I said. You heard me, right? And then he said, well, there was a line of questioning where your client was nodding vigorously and looking at the jury. And there was a
Remember, he's back nodding again. Diddy is nodding when she says he was my baby. Remember, Diddy's smiling, he's nodding. I don't think it's his reaction. I think he's looking at the jury almost like trying to see, maybe in a way. Hold on. All right, here we got another tweet. Tanny Garrigo suggested that to Jane. Tenny suggested that Jane told prosecutors she enjoyed just about every minute with Combs during hotel nights. Wow. By the way, you could tell she was going to be a defense witness, chat. So that's why they're looking at her to say, didn't you tell the prosecutors you love this? Said during hotel nights, the portion with me and him, yes, I love that part. She testified she would have some alone time for about 30 minutes to an hour before the entertainer came and after they left. And after that, she enjoyed when the two of them would make love. Jane confirmed that Combs had gave her the attention and affection she wanted during hotel nights. He's the most affectionate during these nights, adding that he wasn't generally that affectionate otherwise. Wow. Okay. Still waiting for another update from Mr. Inner City Press. He's taking a break, though.
Subsequent moment, we had a sidebar, and I looked and I saw your client looking at the jury and nodding vigorously during that line of questioning. That is absolutely unacceptable. And he wasn't done. The judge then said, it cannot happen again. If it happens again, if it happens even once, I will hear an application from the government to give a curated instruction to the jury which you do not want, or I will consider taking further measures which could result in the exclusion of your client from the courtroom. Now, I've talked with our reporter, Elizabeth Milner. She's been in the court every day for Law and Crime. She's been taking meticulous notes, and she's been observing Diddy and his body language and seeing how he's changed as this trial's gone on. And she says she believes that he still to this point looks very focused, that the stress of the situation, the frustration that he might be feeling hearing this blistering testimony from several government witnesses, it doesn't appear to be impacting him in the way that one might expect. She does say there has been a big difference in the way Diddy has acted since getting that talking to by the judge, because she says that no longer is Diddy looking at each juror as they enter the courtroom and leave the courtroom, which he has been doing since this trial started. But now it appears he is keeping his eyes.
Okay. How fitting. We have a page called P. Diddy Trial Updates, and they got it all. Let's see. So, we got a few more tweets here. So, when you met Combs in 2020, you were earning money as an Instagram influencer, right? She says, yes. You're also receiving $4,700 a month in child support, right? Yes. Once you were dating Combs, did your influencer work change? Yes. I couldn't focus on it anymore. Felt like I only reached about 10% of my earning potential during our relationship. When I moved into a new home in 2023, I thought if we got a place that met Sean's taste, maybe we could start doing hotel nights there. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So she wanted to do hotel nights in her own home instead of hotels. So you and Sean wanted to keep these hotel nights private, right? Yes. It was really important that nothing about the hotel nights got out. We didn't want the public to know, or even his employees. Garrigo says, have you done hotel nights at your previous apartment? Yes, we had. So one of the reasons you got the house was for hotel nights. And so your son could have a yard. He said, could you please say my child? Cool. Yo, whoever this is, yeah, we got to follow this person. They're on with it. They're on with it. They're right with it. Yeah, that's the defense trying to dox her. I'm showing the jury some of your text and audio message from your trip after Turks and Caicos. You testified earlier that he surprised you with an entertainer on hotel night, which caused an argument. Yeah, he did. It affected us for a few days. But in the messages you guys exchanged afterwards, you both sound affectionate. Didn't he tell you he loves you? Yes, in a voice note. He mentioned something about a contract. What was that? He was referring to a love contract. We agreed on it. He rented me a home for $10,000 a month. And your recorded message back to him, would you say you sounded happy? Yes, I told him I had so much fun on the trips. I felt closer to him. You said everything just feels good. I'm so happy. She says, that's right. I did have fun with him. I was expressing my love for the time we spent together, except the part involving the entertainers. When I moved to my rented home, April 2023, he paid $40,000 up front. Let's skip. He said, can you confirm your conversation you had Combs regarding your financial situation? He asked me, you need 3 months rent? I told him I was struggling a bit. And what happened after the conversation? I confronted him later about some things, and then out of the blue, he sent me $20,000. Was this money solicited by you in any way? No, I ain't asked for it. It was completely unsolicited. How did you use the $20,000 he sent? I bought some nice furniture for my place. The court heard you say you sent him a text after receiving the money. Can you describe the message? I texted him thank you, and I called him baby. I was just grateful for the help. So to clarify, you expressed gratitude and used an affectionate term, correct? Yes. The court heard a voicemail from Mr. Combs where he referred to you as a crack pipe. Can you explain what he meant by that nickname? It was just a playful thing from our trip to Turks and Caicos. We had a lot of fun, and he gave me a nickname. Crack pipe, okay. Well, he said he had an addiction to my texts. It was mutual, just fun banter. Garrigo says, how did you respond to this voicemail from Mr. Combs? So I texted him back, something like, crack pipe is so real for both of us. It's definitely mutual. I just like everything you said. I'm thankful. I had so much fun. Turk was incredible. I am happy. Garrigo, so your response was positive, expressing gratitude, enthusiasm about the trip and your nickname. Yes, exactly. I was happy to have fun with it. The trip was amazing, and I want him to know I appreciated it. To confirm, the exchange was lighthearted and reflected mutual enjoyment, right? Yeah, it was all in good fun. We were just joking around, enjoying the vibe from the trip. You mentioned things changed for Combs when he started spending time with young Miami. Yes, it became difficult for me. About 6 months to a year after we started dating. What made it difficult? Their relationship was public. They posted about each other all over social media. Meanwhile, with mine, it was very private. How did that make you feel? It wasn't what I signed up for. I didn't agree to date a man who was in a public relationship with someone else. So you testified about a trip to Miami when you were still trying to get to know Combs. Can you describe what happened during the trip? Yeah, I can. We're in Miami. He bought me a pair of shoes, bag, bracelet. During the trip, did Combs ever discuss his lifestyle with you? He says, yes, he led a polyamorous lifestyle. How did you react to the explanation of that at the time? At first, I didn't mind. We were just trying to get to know each other. But just wasn't a big deal. But did your feelings change over time? Garagos asked. Yes, I developed deeper feelings for him. It became difficult. I was feeling my man, and I wanted him to be mine. Garagos says, you also mentioned there was imbalance between how he treated you compared to the other girlfriends. Could you elaborate, please? I just felt he treated me not the same how he treated his other women. Felt unequal. So to clarify about your concerns about the imbalance that arose as your emotional attachment to him grew, it says, oh no, it felt unequal. So to clarify your concerns, I guess she says yes. Let's talk about your first trip to Turks. What did you observe about him? She's mentioned the drug stuff. We read that already. Did you suggest something to him? Go to a rehab center in Thailand. Did you know early on he was a drug addict? In the beginning, I did not know how to label it. Anyway, let's keep it going. Did you know he was on any prescription medication? Toward the end of the relationship, I found out he was taking antidepressants. Did you want him off drugs? Yes, I want him to return to his natural form. He even told me once that he was interested in taking ketamine therapy. They called for a break. Mark Garagos is in court, seated behind. Okay. They're back. Miss Daphne, would you agree that you willingly participated in this so-called hotel nights? At the time, yes. I felt I had to keep the relationship. But no one forced you, though, to take part, right? Nah, not physically. You were aware that Mr. Combs practiced a polyamorous lifestyle? Jane says he told me early on, yes. Yet you chose to stay in a relationship with him for some time. I did. My feelings for him grew deeper. And during that time, he supported you. Paid your rent, gave you gifts, covered expenses. Yes, he did all of that. Would you say he was kind of generous at times? Yeah, he could be generous. So your relationship, though complicated, had moments of affection and mutual agreement. It did. But it doesn't mean it didn't feel hurt or feel controlling. During the hotel nights, did you and Mr. Combs spend time alone together? Yes, we'd have about 30 minutes to an hour before the entertainer came and afterwards too. How'd you feel about that time? I enjoyed it. Especially when we made love. That part felt intimate. So he gave you the attention you were seeking. Yes, he gave me the affection I wanted during those nights. Was it typical of him? Nah. Wasn't really that affectionate, but those nights he was the most affectionate. Was red lights and baby oil used during hotel nights? No. They weren't only exclusive to those nights. Ooh, okay, that's helping the defense. What else was used? Oh, where else were they used? He used them on our other sexual encounters, even in his private residence. Were you aware that the hotel nights were being filmed? Yeah, I was okay with it. Seems like she might be a Trojan horse, Chad. She's copping a couple things. Or maybe she's just being honest, who knows? And Mr. Combs told you the video was just for the two of y'all, right? That's what he said. You put on a good show for him in the videos because you knew he would watch them again and again, right? Yep. Is it true you enjoy watching or rewatching hotel nights with Mr. Combs? That's not true. I didn't like that part. But you still did it though, right? Yeah. It was just part of the relationship, something I tolerated. Even if it made me feel uncomfortable.
Reason why he doesn't.
Yo, it looks like Diddy's really micromanaging this trial. And I got to give him some credit. I mean, he's taking control of his own, future. Okay? All right. There is an update. This is from CNN, though. Jane confirmed there was few occasions where Diddy Combs ended a hotel night early when she vocalized she wanted to stop. She testified there was a few rare occasions when Combs agreed to dismiss an entertainer when she wasn't attracted to or comfortable with them, but only after she tried to have sexual interactions with the men for a period of time. Geragos tried to suggest that Combs readily agreed to dismiss the men when she wasn't comfortable, but Jane pushed back, saying she had to endure sexual interactions at first. Okay, getting some more tweets. Tenny says the judge, she may pause the cross at 3 to give the jurors a break. She'll pick up back on Wednesday and continue to Thursday. Okay? So they're trying to complete the cross by Thursday. Let's see if we can get some legal analysis from Bradford Cohen says this motion has zero chance of being granted. This is after they said we want a mistrial based on the Banner testimony that didn't happen, or the event that didn't happen, and dangling over the balcony. According to Bradford Cohen, he says this has zero chance of being granted. These are filed based on witness testimony. Let's break it down. The defense says the last witness, Cassie, friend, says Sean Combs hung her over the balcony. Well, the defense has proof that Sean couldn't have done it on that date. He was in New York, not in L.A. Usually this is for a cross to discredit a witness and say she doesn't know what she's talking about. Now, if the government knew that it was impossible on that date for the event to happen and did nothing to verify, there might be an issue. So they're saying that if the government knew that this was a lie, so if someone goes up there and lied, the government can't stop them. But and if they get exposed, good. But if the government knew they were going to lie, that's a problem. It says there might be an issue, but this is not enough for a mistrial to be granted. Mainly, this is for appellate purposes and to preserve the record. Yeah, remember I keep telling you, objecting and these motions, this is how you preserve the record. The government will blow it off by saying, well, it happened, just not positive about the date, but it doesn't make it a false statement. You can bet if it was a defense witness, they would be having a shit fit. Basically saying if they had exposed someone that the defense brought up there like that, they would be probably trying to pursue charges. Interesting.
Downtown New York for day 20 of the Diddy trial, and yesterday we had some fascinating testimony from Jane. Now, Jane is a girlfriend of Diddy, at least that's her pseudonym. She was his girlfriend between 2021 and 2024. She was with Diddy on the very day that the scandal of the Intercontinental video being released came out. So she was there when Diddy learned that the whole world saw the surveillance video footage of him throwing Cassie Ventura to the floor, kicking her repeatedly and trying to drag her down the hall. And what was so interesting is that she talked about the damage control operations that were going on in Diddy's house. Now, she was not there for all the discussion. She said that she was disgusted by Diddy. She couldn't eat when she saw it. They showed her a statement that they had written for Diddy to make, and she was pleased with it, but then she had to leave. And when she got back home, she was disappointed with the final statement. And what was the difference between the two statements? Well, the initial statement actually apologized to Cassie, and the final statement, he didn't do that. What was also interesting is that we learned that Agnifilo, who is currently the lead for Diddy's defense counsel, was with Diddy on that very day. And the reason the statement was changed, and what he said to the court when he was arguing about the omission of certain statements from Jane, what he was arguing is you have to take out all this testimony where she's talking about how she's disappointed. Because the reason she's disappointed is because he doesn't reference Cassie in his final statement. But that was my legal advice to him, that he can't mention it because at the time she was in the middle of testifying to a grand jury, and I thought that it would potentially be very legally damaging for him to actually reference Cassie. That's why he changed the statement. And that's why she now is disappointed in that statement, but that he was acting under the advice of counsel, and that's privilege. Ultimately, the judge disagreed with him, and the judge was probably correct about that. I go into detail about that, explaining that on my video that I went through full Diddy coverage yesterday. I urge you to check that out if you want to see the back and forth exchange as to how this whole thing went down, because it's not just a great story, but it's also a great assessment as to the shrewd strategy, both by the defense and the state, as to how they handle this entire affair. I'm Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic. If you like more of this content, please like.
Diddy trial, I heard you was up there, yo.
I went to the court. You know, I had to see for myself, brother. You know, for me, being as petty I could be sometimes, I wanted to just see his face. I wanted to see him in that circumstance, in that situation. Everything that he always done to people, got away with it, it just came back and it's hitting them in a crazy way to see him right there. The government is about to take everything that he's gained, everything that he owns.
Diddy trial, I heard you was up there, yo.
I went to the court. You know, I had to see for myself, brother. You know, for me, being...
Diddy is my father. It's the most disgraceful thing in my life. My sisters and I left the courthouse.
No, this is fake. This is fake.
Yeah, Puffy. Buddy.
This YN from Philly crashed out after randomly getting called a rat.
Okay. Is it?
Week 5. Why didn't you do it? So that's really what I was saying. If it's about he blocked the door, okay, we're talking about a different thing, physical restraint. But if it's just mental, which a lot of this was, you know, I quoted the singer that Shia LaBeouf was with, FKA Twigs, I think is her name. And I read her quote, which said, I could have left any time I wanted to. I had a townhouse in London that I could have gone to. And I said, then why am I reading about this? If you could have done that, why didn't you do it? So that's really what I was saying. It's certainly not excusing Diddy. I went to great lengths to say how much I thought he should be in jail. I don't know what kind of criminal he is, Harvey. I know that's your big theme is, are they going to get him on what they're charging him with? But even if they don't get him on that, they ought to get him on something.
Well, but you did say that if you want a #1 record, you make a deal with the devil sometime.
At 8 o'clock at night, because the police were there to tell her 3 daughters, 9, 8, and 5, had just been suffocated by the husband.
Framing, if you will. Good to meet you, Bill. And I appreciate you pointing out that what Diddy's done is quite horrible and he should suffer some consequence.
Up on our site. 45% of the people agreed with him. That's a huge number. I'm wondering if what Bill says is kind of resonating with the jury.
It is, because if you don't think there are some women jurors from New York City, really as tough as they get, in my opinion, where I'm from, by the way, that are going to see it the way Bill sees it, which is like, you had a choice. Once this happened once, twice, you could have left. And I'm sorry, everything Bill's saying is right, because understand this. I'll go back to this. I keep repeating this. But all these issues with Cassie Ventura, for example, let's start with her, where she didn't leave, as Bill just said. She kept coming back for more because it was enhancing her career, or she believed it would. She never went to the police. She went to a money lawyer 10 years later. She tried to get money. She tried to write a book. She got $20 million. According to her text messages contemporaneous with these horrific incidents that she testified to at trial, were making it look like this was a great relationship, contemporaneous. Now, you could say, oh, Stockholm Syndrome, all these different excuses. But I will say one thing to you. Had none of this existed, had Cassie tried to leave, had the text messages been saying, you're a brutalizer, you raped me, you did all these things to me, as opposed to I love you, I want to come back to you, I miss you, whatever, all these points would have been, a bastion of proof for the prosecution. And everyone on this panel would have been saying, oh my God, he's so guilty because she did all these things contemporaneous. She went to the police. Her text messages are consistent. She tried to leave, but he restrained her physically. None of that happened. And so it's fair game to say she's not, unless you think she's a complete moron or was absolutely brainwashed. Completely brainwashed, where she couldn't even make her own choice.
Can I ask a question, Joe?
By the way, she's the one who initiated some of these freak-offs. She's the one who, by the way, she also gave it back to him a few times. Apparently, there were incidents of domestic violence from her to him. Not saying that excuses anything he did. He is a proven criminal. He's a proven bad guy. He's a proven domestic batterer. No question. It's not.
Can I ask you a question, Joe, in good faith? I want to ask you a question, my dear. Do you think in order for a victim, a pure victim, to be listened to, believed, and considered in this construct, do they need to be a perfect victim? Do they need to be perfect?
Of course
Real
not.
question.
There's no such thing as a perfect victim.
Well,
But when
no,
you
I think what
start
you laid
adding
out
up
would have
all
been a
the
perfect
issues-
victim.
But if you start adding up all the issues, just all of them, there's 3 or 4 with Cassie Ventura.
But
not to
even
mention
Bill
the
Maher
other
said,
ones.
but Joe, even Bill Maher said he didn't believe that the text messages were sincere. He even was able to hold the space for the fact that that was likely the result.
That's just one thing. But Bill Maher came to a conclusion that she could have left. Don't you think 45% of the
Yeah, that's a good point, Chad. The point that is going to be of discussion is, why didn't these people walk away? The idea, and I know I was making a point, some people didn't like it earlier, is the financial coercion enough to say, now I granted, you know why the defense is trying to dox 50 a bit, right? Or dox Jane. They're trying to just bring up the fact that you were 35 years old when you got in a relationship with this man. You can't act like you were some young girl who got used to a lifestyle that you couldn't let go mentally, and you were down to do whatever to keep it. You were down to essentially try your best to keep this thing, but it's not because you didn't have other options. If you're saying it was only because of the money, isn't your baby father a millionaire or a billionaire, maybe close to it? That's what they bring up. But you were getting child support. You were getting money from your influencer job. You aren't as desperate as it seems. Okay?
pollsters came in.
I can't wait to see what the jury. You know what?
All you need is one juror. All you need is one juror who's going to say, "Oh,
yeah, I was
come
going to say, you and I both know pollsters a verdict don't make. I look forward to the jury.
Bill, I know you have to leave. I have 2 questions for you. I'm fascinated to know what you think of the racketeering charge in particular against Diddy.
Well, I mean, I get all my information about this from you. So
I know this to be a fact as somebody who served on a board for domestic violence and child abuse victims for 6 years here in New York City, Safe Horizon. What if I told you, Bill, that the most dangerous time sex trafficking
I like my man Taco Pina.
and racketeering.
That was
Hey,
sex
Joe.
trafficking. He
Joe,
was
you know who we can compare it to, though? You know who we could
What?
compare it to? R. Kelly, who also got locked up on RICO.
Minors.
He got convicted of
Minors.
RICO.
Those were minors. Weren't they? Ebony,
But why
wasn't
don't
minors?
you
though?
compare him to Keith Raniere?
Come on,
Why
Joe.
don't you? These were grown-ass women and grown-ass men who could have left that cult at any time and didn't because they were under a psychological, financial, and physical control of him. It's the same pattern that we're seeing, attested to
This
in the
is a
Diddy
jealous
courtroom.
lunatic going
And
crazy.
some-
Keith Raniere was someone
some of
who
R.
they looked
Kelly's
at like as a
victims
Jim
were
Jones
majority
figure.
age, Joe, and
Like
you
a
That's
cult
how they
leader.
look at Diddy. They look at Diddy as a god. They
No,
said
they
it.
didn't look
Many
at
of them
Diddy
have
as a cult
testified he
leader.
was a god.
They looked at him as a guy who could advance their careers. Come on.
No.
Guys, is it a good idea for prosecutors to introduce sex tapes? Because there is a buzz now that they are either considering it or made a decision to do it. Would it make sense for the prosecutors to show these freakoffs? Because I don't know which way it cuts.
I think they are. It's just under seal. And they're not shown to the gallery. I thought they were, or they have. They've showed pictures, though.
They've already shown a few.
Yeah, they've
That
already shown some
doesn't
to
make
the
sense,
jury.
actually, he's saying. I don't know, Harvey. It's a good question. I haven't seen them. Even though I did speak with Diddy and consult with him, I have not seen those tapes. I've been told, and I don't know, unless I see them, I can't opine, but I've been told they're just like sort of weird, but nothing so insanely graphic, right? That no one's getting hurt, no one's being bound or gagged or anything like that. They're just like this guy watching 2 other people have sex. It's strange, it's weird. Again, I don't know if that really advances the ball here. What advances the ball is car bombing people's cars, threatening people, if they don't do something, he's going to harm them. That's advancing the ball. Showing these tapes, telling about his baby oil, talking about his applesauce on hamburgers, I don't know if that advances the racketeering case here at all.
Ashley?
Well,
Okay, we are going to get into some more tweets. I wanted to, again, I'm not sidestepping on topics. I just want to, we got some more tweets here. The inner city press ever come back? Nope. Okay. So we got a few more tweets. Here we go. Here we go. All right, where is Jesus? Okay. So they came back. She said she willingly participated. He told her about the polyamorous relationship, that she said she was cool with it, but later her feelings got deeper. Then they talk about him paying her rent. He could be very generous, whatever. During hotel nights, did y'all spend time alone? 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after. She said she enjoyed it. They made love. He wasn't affectionate, but on those nights he was. He says they got the crib. They got her the $10,000 crib that they could do freak-offs in the crib. Okay? Diddy told her, yo, the video is just for me and you to see. He said, isn't it true you enjoy watching? She said, nah, I ain't enjoying watching that shit. Tenny told him, yo, we're gonna pause the cross at 3 to give the jurors a break, but she'll pick up on Wednesday. We'll continue to Thursday. Garrigo says, let's talk about the hotel nights. What was your understanding of why he wanted them? He said, they were driven by his desires. I label it as cuckold. A man turned on by watching his woman have sex with another man. That term was spot on. Garrigo says, well, why did you participate? She says, out of love. I wanted to please him. Did Mr. Combs ever explain his motivations? He liked to call it was voyeurism. I use the word cuck for myself. Jane says, I think there might be some bi-curiosity involved. Cucks can be curious, but too afraid to act on it. Ooh, so she's accusing Diddy of wanting that schmeat. That schmeat. You know that schmeat? Garrigo says, did he ever stop at a hotel night because you wanted to? She said, yes. There were a few times he ended it early when I spoke up and I said I wanted to stop. And if you were uncomfortable or comfortable with the men, did he dismiss? If you weren't comfortable with the men, would he dismiss them? Rarely. Only if I tried to interact with them sexually for some time. But was he responsive when you were uncomfortable? No, not readily. So it doesn't look like she's really getting Diddy's back. She was like, he would let me fuck them niggas. I had to go through the motions first before he considered letting them go. So let's talk about the 2 times you cried after the hotel night. Do you remember the first? Jane says yes. It was early in the relationship. I cried because Sean was about to leave right after the hotel night. So when did you ask him to stay with you? Change his plans. He stayed to comfort me. The second time, we were in the shower together. This was somewhere in the middle of a relationship. I started crying after another hotel night. Was Combs high on ecstasy at the time? He said he was. He told me, you gonna ruin my high. And he was too high to see me cry. Garrigo says, let's go back to your earlier testimony. The hotel nights, or as you call them, freak-offs. She says, yes. You described these nights as being driven by Mr. Combs, right? She says, yes. But there were moments that weren't there where you had to say how things played out. What? There were moments he wasn't there? Oh, no. There were moments, weren't there, that you had to say in how things played out. She says, there were a few times I voiced what I wanted or didn't want. Was it entirely your input? No, not always. Sometimes I'd be able to speak up, though it didn't change the outcome. Garrigos, let's go over some of the messages between you and KK, Christina Karam. These were sent around the time he allegedly asked you to bring drugs to Miami, correct? Garrigo says, no, she says yes. Daphne says yes. Garrigo says you testified earlier you had a phone conversation with Ms. Karam, during which she told you it was fine to bring drugs and even instructed you to put them in your checked luggage. Is that true? Yeah. But the messages we read here today, they don't mention anything of her saying anything like that. Do they? No, they don't. We spoke on the phone. She said it verbally. Garrigo says, when Ms. Karam traveled with Combs, do you know if she flew on a private jet? Jane said, I assume she did, but I can't say for sure. Garrigo says, would you describe your relationship with her as close? Jane says, no, not at all. We weren't close. She ain't like me. Garrigo says, how did that affect your relationship with Mr. Combs? Jane says it made things hard. She was always with him. I believe she had strong opinions about me, and these opinions influence how Sean treated me. So according to Jane, Christina Karam didn't like her. That made things hard. And he says she was always with him, but she had strong opinions about her. And those opinions would influence how Diddy treated her. Wow. They called for a lunch break. Y'all think he was fucking KK? Somebody says KK was a queen.
Is because he can see his nonverbal communication is not